We spent hours looking at data to find which specs are truly the best at low MMR, and today we will tell you which DPS and healers are performing the best and which ones truly struggle, including the best and worst matchups along the way. But first, we need to let you in on some classified information. Have you ever wondered why some of the people you encounter in Solo Shuffle are so weird? You might think there's no way these people are human, and you would be right. Since 2006, our world of Warcraft has been the destination for intergalactic species, aliens from other galaxies who live among us and queue with us every day in disguise. Most of them are peaceful and just wanting to enjoy time away from their planet, but others are vicious and bloodthirsty creatures, wanting nothing more than to farm your precious human CR. We can't let that happen. We must protect Azeroth against these invaders at all costs. That's why we designed brand new Solo Shuffle courses for every role, which teach you years worth of technical game knowledge in easily bingeable playlists. We even have guides on positioning, role tips, gladiator secrets, class counters, and more. All while getting personalized feedback on his gameplay thanks to Arena Coach. Skillcapped is protecting our planet and can give you the CR you crave. If you somehow don't climb at least 400 rating while using our services, you'll get every penny back. Get the rating you truly deserve and the rewards you've always wanted with Skillcapped using the exclusive discount links below. For now, back to the video. Now, when it comes to Melee, there are 5 specs doing exceptionally well at lower ratings, including Ret Paladin, Arms Warrior, Enhancement Shaman, and then surprisingly 2 others which might come as a surprise. It's no secret that Ret would be strong across the entire ladder, especially since some of its best matchups are into other melee, especially Windwalker Monks and Sub Rogues, which are 2 of Ret's best matchups. It's also no secret that Ret's worst matchups are into mages and other slippery casters, including Dev DH, and even struggles into Enhancement Shaman of all things. Arms is also a solid pick at lower ratings, but just like Ret, it does suffer into high mobility ranged classes, especially mages and Devastation Evokers, but is quite sturdy against many melee, including Havoc Demon Hunters, which is a bit surprising. Now, as far as enhancement is concerned, this is a spec known for doing god tier level burst, which is definitely a plus at lower ratings where defensive cooldowns aren't always used efficiently. Enhance seems to do really well against most casters, but especially demo warlocks due to all of that funnel damage it gets from spreading flame shock onto pets. If you queued Arena this season at any rating, you probably knew these were some of the best melee, but as it turns out, both Assassination Rogue and Survival Hunter are also doing super well at lower MMR. As a rogue has a really solid matchup spread into most casters thanks to all those Garrett silences. It's also one of the hardest matchups for any Void Weaver Disc Priest since they pretty much have 0 room to cast. Its main struggles are into brawler melee like Arms Warrior and Evokers who have no problem cauterizing those bleeds. As far as survival is concerned, this is another spec that does super well into casters, especially mages. Its worst matchup though is Unholy DK, and that's because an army of pets effectively renders the damage from Sentinel useless, since Chakram will spread its damage across all of those pets. As far as the worst melee at low MMR are concerned, Feral Druid, Frost DK, and Sub Rogue are all drastically underperforming thanks to a combination of a high skill floor or janky win condition. With specs like these, players tend to get stuck below 1600, which you can clearly see in this sub-rogue data. And when compared to Ret Paladin, you can see that more players easily blow past 1800 to climb to Elite and higher. Right now, the biggest wildcard at low ratings is Havoc DH. Now obviously, this has been one of the best melee in the game at the top of the ladder. Just look at the leaderboards on EU for a few seconds and you will see an ocean of purple. DH does really well into many casters thanks to all of that spell damage reduction, but can struggle hard into physical brawlers and even BM and Marks Hunters. With all that in mind, this is what the data says about the performance of specs at lower ratings, where familiar trends hold true. Brawler, tankier melee with straightforward win conditions tend to do well, while squishier, control-based tacticians tend to fall behind. And just for comparison, here's what our latest Solo Shuffle tier list looked like for high ratings, where Demon Hunters, Sub Rogues, and Feral Druids tend to do noticeably better. Now, as far as the best ranged are concerned, BM Hunter, Marks Hunter, Dev DH, and Frost Mage are all solid picks, but once again, there are a few sleepers. BM Hunter continues to be a staple at low MMR thanks to its relatively simple win condition of dealing big damage and landing traps on cooldown, which sometimes aren't even needed. While it does have some tough matchups into rogues and even shadow priests, it absolutely blasts warlocks and DKs, while also being quite solid into disc priest of all things. Mark's Hunters are also really solid at lower ratings, doing really well into mages, which is no surprise, but struggling a bit into rogues who have no problem shutting down True Shot with stuns, disarms, and gouge. And yeah, it's no secret that DevDH is really good at all ratings, thanks to having insane burst damage while also being super tanky. It's one of the few specs that does well into Ret Paladins, which is a massive advantage as this continues to be one of the most popular specs in Solo Shuffle. It's also no secret that Frost Mage is really solid across the board. In previous expansions, we might have considered this a high skill floor spec, but with its redesign in Midnight, Frost is able to do incredible damage without ever needing to cast at all. Its hardest matchups are, of course, all 3 Hunter specs, but Mage does really well into other casters and most melee. Now, these 4 specs are obviously strong and everyone knows it, but there are 3 slightly off-meta picks that are also doing well at low MMR. Ellie Shaman seems to be pretty consistent in Shuffle, despite having some difficult matchups into the other Shaman specs and, unsurprisingly, Assassination Rogue. The sturdiness of Ellie combined with its passive synergy with most melee make it a solid option for grinding. Fire Mage is also a great choice for low ratings after the buffs to Meteor a few weeks ago. In case you didn't know, mages can essentially 100-0 targets every minute with Combustion and Meteor, which works great whenever you have an extra stun on your team to keep targets in place. The main downside of Fire is survivability, where the lack of passive slows and only one charge of barrier make it much squishier than Frost. The final range spec doing well at lower MMR is actually Affliction Warlock. If you've watched our tier lists evolve this expansion, you already know that Affliction was buffed almost every single week in the early season and has emerged as the best Warlock spec by a pretty big margin. Warlocks seem to struggle hardest against DKs and enhancement shamans, but have favorable matchup spreads into most casters. As far as the worst range specs go, Arcane Mages, Destro Warlocks, Balanced Druids, Demo Warlocks, and Augmentation Evokers all seem to underperform at low ratings. Just like Melee, a trend is pretty clear. Range specs that can do a ton of instant damage without needing to worry about interrupts tend to perform best at lower ratings, while specs that are super reliant on hard casting tend to fall behind. If you aren't a precog generating machine, you might especially struggle with any of these C-tier picks. Now, oddly enough, our low MMR range tier list isn't too far off from higher ratings, especially in the highest and lowest tiers. Across the board, specs like Arcane Mage, Balanced Druid, and Demo Warlock seem to be lagging behind. But healers is where we see the biggest differences. Right now, at low ratings, Disc Priests are a clear standout, but Preservation Evokers are also doing quite well. At higher ratings, Disc is a middle-of-the-pack healer. It has great cooldowns and can play a bit of offensive support, but can get easily overwhelmed in the late game, especially against teams with lots of CC. Hunters and Mages are actually some of the hardest matchups for Disc, but in lobbies where crowd control is less relevant, Disc seems to do okay. Preservation Evoker also does very well at lower ratings, having pretty solid win rates across the board at low MMR, doing exceptionally well against CC-reliant specs. It turns out making Nullifying Shroud passive and reducing the difficulty of the spec overall has really helped redefine Pres Evoker as an entry-level healer. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about Restoration Druid, which is one of the weaker healers at low ratings. Despite Blizzard's efforts to simplify specs going into Midnight, Resto Druid is still relatively complicated, having a maintenance-heavy rotation that is easy to mess up. We are still noticing that many players tend to get stuck below 1600 on Druid compared to Disc Priest, where players easily blow past 1800 into Elite. Holy Paladin is also considerably weaker at lower ratings, despite being a powerhouse in the past. Right now, Paladins just lack raw output, and unless you are completely dialed in with your healing and cooldown rotation, you're going to struggle to climb. For now, these are our rankings for healers at lower ratings, based on data we've collected from over 1 million matches with Arena Coach. But even for the underperformers, you can still carry games by sticking to some healing fundamentals, including things like defensive dispels. If you know what CC is worth dispelling and when it's needed the most, you can still have a huge impact on most games, which you can learn more about after this in our brand new Solo Shuffle course for healers, so be sure to check it out after this video. For now, we want to thank you all for watching. See you soon.